Hello, everyone, and welcome to another informative episode of the Florida Business Forum podcast. Let's open the Florida Business Forum floodgates and let the information begin to flow. Here's your Florida Business Forum information guru and anchorman, Sam Yates.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Florida Business Forum. I'm Sam Yates, your host, and some call me an information guru, and today you're going to get an idea of why I am called an information guru, because I have a special guest, Clayton Callander, President of Impact Service Group. And now you're going to go, Impact Service Group, there's Clayton. Well, Impact Service Group is a national HVAC facilities management firm located in Ridgefield, Connecticut. I know somebody's already saying, Sam, this is the Florida Business Forum. Why Connecticut? So let me pass on some of that guru information. Think back, 1845. Florida was not quite what it is today, but it was still hot and buggy and nasty. And if you were a physician, you know that unless you had ice shipped in from the Northeast or the far north, wherever you were in Florida was going to be hot, and your patients, if you were a Dr. John Gorey, were not faring too well. So Dr. Gorey came up with an invention that used horsepower, real horses, water or sail or steam to do a compression process that created ice so that it didn't have to be shipped in from out of the far north. That ice-making machine led to a few other developments and that was back around 1845. In 1902, Willis Carrier, an engineer, used electricity in 1902 to cool and remove humidity from a printing plant in New York. And you're like, Sam, get to the point. That's why we are here today, because electricity changed everything, in particular when it comes to air conditioning. Now, a lot of things did not change over the last 100 plus years. Clayton Callander is here to gear us in on something that didn't change, the need to monitor HVAC systems to make sure they are working correctly, and more importantly, to make sure that everything inside a facility that's under air conditioning or heat is properly protected from whatever it is that you're trying to protect it from. Long story, but that's why you're here today, because you have a new product called Nebula. So tell us about Nebula and how it fits into that Nebula story I just told.
Thanks, Sam. And I really appreciate you having me on the Florida Business Forum podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. And just thanks for making the time and giving us a little bit of time to talk about air conditioning. I know it's probably not on the top of people's minds because it is still March. And even in Florida, it's not the hottest this time of year. Up in Connecticut, there's still ice on the streets. But, in 3 months, people will be singing our praises and our phone lines will be ringing off the hook, as they always are that time of year. Nebula started as kind of a discussion of how we can better serve our clients and our vendors in the field. To kind of connect the dots on your introduction, Impact really is a connector between small local businesses, vendors that are typically 2 to 5 truck vendors, that are serving local businesses in small towns in all 50 states, including Florida, and large multinational corporations that don't have the time or the ability to manage the thousands of vendors they would need to service all of their locations across the continental US, Puerto Rico, and Hawaii. So, I always kind of like to take a first principles engineering approach to everything. My background is in engineering, and the thought process that Rich, one of the other founders of the company, and I had was, how could we utilize technology not to replace people, but to enable them to get the job done better and faster than they were before? And that's how Nebula kind of came into being.
Now, Impact Service Group, as you just referenced, is in the HVAC service industry. And one of the things that I have learned very quickly in talking with you and other principals in the company is that service really means customer service. So when someone calls you or they need a problem, you're there on demand right away. So this product fits a bit of a different business model, something that's not being done these days. Tell us about that. It's called a remote monitoring device, electronic equipment monitoring. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Nebula is the platform, and that's how you access the information at your fingertips through a browser. But the remote equipment monitor, or REM, as we like to call it, is kind of our way to bring environmental monitoring and control to the masses. To kind of give a little bit of background, we really wanted to, again, enable technicians and connect them to both the sites that they manage and the customers, these large multinational customers that are in a very nicely air-conditioned office a long ways away, to the real-time data that's coming from these devices, right? So we developed a very small, cost-effective device that can go in any kind of air conditioning unit or heating unit, monitor it real time, and then report that information both to these small local vendors, us as the intermediary, and the customer. Through that like democratization of data is what I like to call it. We know that technicians will be able to respond faster. The customers will trust the technicians better because they can see in real time their equipment being maintained and restored. And we will have a more accurate pulse kind of on all these units that we manage across the country, and be able to dispatch technicians quicker, monitor them better, and give them the historical data that they need to service equipment well. Yeah, I used to be an engineer in the Navy, and nothing is better for diagnosing a problem than being able to look at the equipment up to and at the point of failure. So that's the information that we hope and know that we'll be able to give to every single partner in this repair infrastructure that we service.
And those who know me know that I love to get down into the details and actually look at the graphs and the charts and know what the hell is going on with all of this stuff. So they're going to have to reel me in right now. I'm going to break it down a little bit, if we can, into what I call the Joe and Mabel six-pack discussion. So I'm going to put on a facility manager or a facility owner's hat. In my facility, and as you described earlier, it typically is a smaller, or maybe not one that has access to hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's critical that the facility manager, and I'll come back to that in a minute, monitors the performance of the HVAC equipment. Your unit, and I sort of look at it, and now I'm going to get nerdy, is sort of like a white box technology. It's agnostic. And I found that was just fascinating. You have a piece of equipment that will literally plug in some fashion, I don't want to give away the secrets, to an HVAC system, and I, as a facility manager, know how my equipment is operating remotely. I don't have to be in 100 stores at once, for example, and I can tell, whoa, wait, there's some vibration here. Something else is going here. I see a big surge in power usage. Fascinating. Does anybody else in the industry, in the United States in particular, do that right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I think you brought it up in a very pointed way, which is it is technology that historically has cost people $100,000, per site and upwards from there. That is kind of the impetus of this idea. Was how can we take things that large factories, the oil and gas industry, nuclear power plants, all of these places that have the money to spend to implement, how can we take that technology and bring it to the masses? Because this is nothing new. This has existed for, I would say, a decade or more now, using IoT devices and edge computing to monitor important equipment. What we realized is that in the last 3 to 5 years, the cost of this equipment has gone down so dramatically that it now isn't something that is limited to those like really high important equipment. If this fails, the whole factory goes down items. So we built and really just to kind of pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz here, the only reason these companies are still paying that much is because of proprietary software that the end manufacturers of these remote monitoring devices are kind of have these like legacy Fortune 500 businesses that can't change software infrastructure quickly in a chokehold. So we realized we could go to small retail businesses, offer them the same hardware with a much lighter version of the software that will do what it needs to do without maybe the complications of a nuclear reactor or a oil and gas refinery. That lets us hit a price point that's, I would say, appealing to even, a small retail store in a mall or something like that.
Now, I have to share with everyone that your interview, we're sort of setting the stage with your interview, but we're going to be doing a multi-part series of interviews about the Impact Group and in particular Nebula, because there are some separate components of it. Device Nebula, service industry, retail or other users, but at the end of the day, they're all connected like this. So for our audience, we're going to glaze over some of those with tiny bits of information, but in other episodes, come back and do a deep dive. So I just want to remind everyone that today is the first part of a multi-part series. And Clayton, I know that probably already someone's going, wait, I own some buildings. Oh, wait, I have a retail chain. Or I'm a facility manager and I have been so overburdened by trying to keep up on this. I want what he's talking about. How can someone get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can reach out to either me with my email, which I'm sure Sam will append to this podcast. They can go to impactservicegroup.com to sign up for a consultation with us there. Either way works fine.
Back to Nebula, and I want to key back into agnostic. A lot of people would not see the value of having a piece of equipment that could fit into any type of system. But this does that because you're trying to make the field level for everyone. So if I have 3 different plants or 3 different locations or 100 different locations, and the provider of the HVAC system is different, your equipment fits.
That's 100% correct. The equipment monitoring portion of an EMS system historically has always been made by the manufacturer. And that has some efficiencies. It allows you to tap into the device and use the in-unit or like the built-in sensors to monitor things. But those sensors might not tell the whole story. And also, you're now kind of bought into that ecosystem and you can only install that type of equipment and you have to pay for their software, right? So again, the goal of this is to provide you data that you don't need to sell your soul to a air conditioning manufacturer to get, and do that at a price that's, I would say, more representative of the low cost of data that we see everywhere else in the world, right? I can run an AI prompt for a couple cents, but I have to pay, $1,000 a store a month for access to like a few data points coming from my Linux device. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So the goal is to do that.
That this then becomes something that no matter the scale, your equipment, your Nebula fits it all.
That's a great point. And I think that actually reminded me of the second thing that I wanted to say, which is basically not only are we device agnostic, not will it only work on any type of air conditioning unit that you want, we're also agnostic to your IoT infrastructure. We totally understand the frustrations of a vendor manager or even just somebody that owns a small local store in a mall to try and get on, the IoT infrastructure. There's always some IT guy you have to email, they have to do their due diligence and all this stuff. So this also does not require to any kind of local network connection. This works on either cellular or Starlink if you're in a more rural area. That allows us to provide you data without requiring any connection to the internet through your infrastructure. again, making it easy for a facilities manager to just choose to use our product without having to do the traditional IT due diligence that's required.
I think from a facilities manager standpoint, this is important also, because when I look at that industry, and I keep track of what's going on in a variety of industries just because of my interest in a lot of different things. We're seeing an aging facility manager. Look who's talking, right, Sam? But we're seeing people age out of that industry, and there's not a lot of people coming in going, hey, I want to be an FM. So this allows the facility managers who are overtaxed and perhaps thinking of getting out of the industry to say, you know what, this is a great tool. It's a force multiplier. Now, with this, there can be literally multiples of me doing my job, and I really don't have to work 24/7.
Yeah. And I think that brings in a good point. This is meant to enable people, not replace either the technicians or the facilities managers. All it does is it provides real-time data on a air conditioning device and the space that it's cooling. It provides that over either Starlink or a cellular connection. And it does it in a way that gives you hopefully predictive failures ahead of time, right? So the idea is as a facilities manager, you can get push notifications about the status of your unit, and we'll be able to tell you, hey, based on vibration data and temperature readings from, this carrier unit installed at, your Tampa Bay store, we think it's going to fail this weekend. You should dispatch a technician now. We're happy to do that for you as a facilities management company. And that will help you avoid an overtime call or even having to close the store for the entire weekend because there won't be a technician available to service it. Which brings me to one other point is we totally understand and we see it firsthand about kind of the technician shortage that's sweeping the country right now. Hopefully, the long-term solution is that we'll get a lot of people more interested in the trades, and Impact Service Group sponsors a couple of organizations to help do that. But in the meantime, we need to be more efficient with manpower. And what that means is giving facilities managers and ourselves the ability to dispatch technicians not on overtime and not on the weekends when they're most taxed, and also dispatch them efficiently. Give them the information ahead of time about we think it was a compressor. Here was all the data that gave us that we think it's a compressor failure. When you show up to the unit, you'll know what to look for, and your time will be used more effectively.
I have friends who own service companies, and they do a great job. I have friends in the retail industry who have problems with service techs. And I have a few people that I know who are facility managers, and they have just literally sessions where they're pulling their hair out because, Sam, it says right here they came out and they did this, 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 and this. I don't think they were even here. Can you monitor that?
Yes, we do. We have QR codes on the units. We can get technicians to check in and out. But more importantly, you'll have real-time data from the device, right? You'll know if power was off when it was restored. You'll know what the temperature split was across the unit. So if it was cooling ineffectively, and then on our side, we see a technician visit, it's now cooling effectively, right? We've talked about two kind of different components of this, Nebula being the platform and REM being the device. REM, or this remote equipment monitor, is the hardware installed on the device that's giving you real-time data about the equipment. Nebula is where that data, as well as data from several other sources, work order history, expense history, technician dispatch history, all that other data that is needed to supplement that device comes together and allows you to make more informed business decisions.
And I think that's what it's all about. We're talking business decisions about facilities and the contents inside the facilities. And when you say REM, one of the things that I know a facility manager or building owner or retail operator somewhere is going to go, wait, I have EMS, or I have a system that is an automated system of some sort. Give us the overview, the 10-cent tour of what's the difference, and maybe I should ask you to let people know what I just referenced too. But the EMS is Energy Management System, and there's also BAS. And you're going to correct me, I know, Building Automation System.
No, that is correct. Yeah. Well, first of all, you said you hear REM and what do facilities managers think? I was going to say the band, but if you're really.
It did occur to me too, yes.
You're really thinking about HVAC specifically. We're definitely not as famous as the band, nor would I ever dream to be, but hopefully we can get close. But I think the main difference and the point that we're trying to make is we are not controlling and monitoring everything. This is a focus on your most valuable piece of equipment. We're not going to, we also monitor temperature, right? But we're not going to monitor the amount of energy that your lights are using and like all the other stuff, which I think is valuable to some people. I'm not trying to say an EMS system is not worth the expense, but I do think that it probably provides a lot more information than most facilities managers actually use, right? So we are taking a very strict focus on the single most expensive piece of equipment to maintain and repair for a facilities manager. As well as all the sensors inside of the building and in the unit to make sure that unit is cooling its space effectively. And we're providing that data in real time. And because we're taking a very small scope approach, the cost is incredibly effective. And the other point I'll say about that is, the other thing that makes it cost effective is that this is a piece of equipment that if we had the money to deploy these in every single unit that we manage in the country, we would pay for it ourselves because it makes our job so much easier, right? So because of that, the only thing that we're charging customers for is the hardware. The software is software that we've already built for ourselves in our internal usage. And again, we're just giving facilities managers and technicians access to that same system. So because of that, I think we're doing something very different than anybody else in the space, which is, there is not a subscription service. I think we all have subscription service fatigue, and I do as well personally. And so we as a company are trying to get away from that.
And I think that's probably one of the key things that a lot of folks have made little notes on already, that they don't need all the bells and whistles. They just want to make sure that certain things are working properly and they get ahead of the game. From a retail operator's standpoint, and I know I've heard some of the conversations on who's in line already, ladies and gentlemen, to have this in their facilities, because the retail world is so competitive. And if there is something for a retail operator that says you'll be able to monitor and maintain, and perhaps some of the figures I've seen say up to a 16% energy savings, and you're going, well, Sam, that's not a lot of energy savings. But if you're a retailer with a lot of facilities or even a few facilities, that adds up over time.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of twofold. It's the energy savings is very important, but it's also just uptime in general, right? So savings in repairs and energy usage, and then uptime. I'd say those are the two things that we hope to bring to the retail space, especially. Again, you look at the lack of technicians in the market today. They're all in demand on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday, and that also is when a retail store gets the majority of its revenue, right? So the idea was, how can we forecast those failures through remote monitoring and edge computing and even some artificial intelligence baked into the device, and then dispatch technicians on a time when they're not in high demand, right? It's like when you pre-schedule your Starbucks order so that it's made before the lunch rush, or the morning rush. That's what we are already doing with this device in the field.
I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb, and I'm not talking politics, but certainly when we have a world where there are some things in turmoil and there's a possibility of tariffs, maybe yes, maybe no. If you are a facility manager, the last thing in the world you want to have is something to break and the parts aren't available. That has a value when you can do the predictive failure analysis.
Yeah, we're just getting started. But I do think, and I know that our long-term vision is to get to a world where we have this device in, say, 1,000 of a specific model of carrier, and we have the failure history, and we start to learn that, hey, when the device makes these vibration signals and has these power surges and has these temperature mismatches, that the compressor is going to fail, or the reversing valve in a unit is going to go bad. That way we can order the part ahead of time. Lead times are only going to get longer, like you said, especially with, I would say, the deglobalization of the world is probably the right way to put it. Yep. And the conversion to new refrigerant usage through regulation is not helping either, right? So those two factors are going to push out parts lead times, and Impact Service Group is here to help.
What I like about this whole equation is that you have all the bases covered, and I know that in a future episode that I will go into details on the service side of it, the technicians, the vetting of the technicians. So I just want to let everyone know that that has not escaped my attention. It is something that we're going to pay a lot of attention to for this new product that, my humble opinion as an outside observer, is a game changer. So Clayton, how can people get in touch with you?
You can either email me at the link that Sam will provide below, or go to impactservicegroup.com. And there is, while we are kind of, I would say, towing on the outskirts of politics, Sam, one last thing I'd like to say, not to sound like a broken record though, is the biggest thing that frustrates me as people talk about this AI revolution and all the other technology advancement that's going on is, I think the opening thesis in the discussion is always, how can we use this technology to replace people, or to lower my salary and wages, or to lower my headcount, all these things that have to deal with like forced reductions in people. And I think we all know that when it comes to the trades, that's the one area that, at least in the foreseeable future, all of this stuff is a long way away from touching. So I think that also means that it's kind of gotten ignored, and all this technology advancement that's happened in the last 2 years especially has just kind of gone to places outside of the reach of your typical blue collar American, or your tradesmen, and then also the facilities managers that give them the work that pays for their living. So the thing that really excites me about this is we're able to take some of this really fantastic new technology and use it in a way that not only doesn't replace the American tradesman, but makes them a more skilled worker, makes them a more efficient worker, and makes these small local businesses that we push work to grow and become more successful.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a perfect definition of how to use the tools you have. And I love that explanation, Clayton. I think it's an excellent explanation. Is there anything that and we're going to be doing as I mentioned, other episodes, but anything today that we haven't touched upon that you would like to mention at this time?
No, I think, I really enjoyed the discussion, Sam. I thought your questions were very poignant. And like you mentioned, my email is going to be in the link below. You can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat with you more, whether or not you're interested in the REM device, Nebula, or Impact Service Group more broadly.
And ladies and gentlemen, I sense in being the sensory type of person that I am, I sense in that response that we may be hearing about Impact and Nebula in some other areas, but I'm not going to give away any secrets about the future. So I'm just going to leave you wondering, what the hell is Sam talking about? Now, the most difficult question of the entire episode, Clayton. can you come back for another episode in the future?
I would love to. Thanks you so much for having me on for this episode. And Sam, you're a fantastic interviewer. I really like the way that this podcast is going. I think it's a fantastic idea. And anytime you want to have me back on, I would love to be here.
When I find talented people that help educate an industry, I'm just absolutely going to be on that like you wouldn't believe it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a game changer for the HVAC industry and a variety of associated industries that we won't even go into right now. So I'm just going to leave you with that thought that we're going to be looking more and more into this game changer called Nebula by Impact. Clayton, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.
And I am Sam Yates. And until our next episode, ladies and gentlemen, the next episode of the Florida Business Forum is going to have something special. You wait and see. And until then, have a great day, everybody.
The Florida Business Forum is dedicated to showcasing Florida businesses and CEOs of all sorts to promote their business or not-for-profit in the only business forum of its type in Florida. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, the Florida Business Forum is now accepting guest applications. Have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned for more business.